Drawing a cute cat like this one is easier than you think, and I'm about to show you exactly how you can do it, no matter your current skill level. So grab your drawing tools, and let's get started. I will be doing this demo on my iPad using the app Procreate. And if you are using Procreate just like me, I have some good news. We will only be working with free brushes such as the one provided in the app. But before we jump in, I want to take a few seconds to share some illustrations that you created by following my videos and then share it with me on Instagram. If you want a chance to be featured in the intro of my next tutorial, then make sure to share the cat you will draw in this video with me on Instagram. But enough talking, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do here is create a canvas. So you can go ahead and within your Procreate gallery, tap on the plus sign right here, and then select this option right here to create a custom size. And I'm personally going to use 2500 pixels by 3300 pixels. And then once you have those dimensions, you can simply tap on Create right here. Okay, now that we have our canvas, we're going to use the symmetry tool, which is going to allow us to draw on just one side, and Procreate is going to create a perfect copy on the other side, which is going to make our life a little bit easier. To activate the symmetry tool, you can go in your menu here, the wrench icon menu that is, and in the canvas submenu, go ahead and activate the drawing guide toggle, which at this point is probably going to look like these little squares. This is not what we want. So we need to go in Edit Drawing Guide right here and select Symmetry at the very bottom here, which should bring you a vertical line like this in the middle. If for some weird reason it is not a vertical line in the middle, you can move the line using the blue circle right here. And you can rotate it using this green circle right here. The other options do not matter at all for what we're doing, so we're just going to leave them as is. And so as I mentioned, the symmetry tool is going to allow us to draw on just one side, and Procreate is going to automatically create or fill in the other side. And so we're going to use this tool to build the main structure of the cat, starting with the front of the body, then adding the head, and finally the back legs. And to keep our file organized, I always like to rename our layers. So let's go ahead and open our layer menu here. And if we tap on this layer 1, the layer menu is going to open up, and we're going to have the option to rename the layer. And we're going to rename this layer to Body. And one note here, if you are wondering why it says Assisted right here under the main name of the layer, it is because we have the symmetry activated on the layer. If in your case, for some weird reason again, it doesn't say Assisted, if you tap on the layer to open the layer menu, you can manually activate Drawing Assist right here. So the brush we're going to use for the bulk of this video is the monoline brush, which is a free brush that comes with Procreate, and you can find it within the calligraphy pack that comes with the app, so monoline right here. And the size of the brush is totally up to you. If you prefer going with something smaller so you can have more details, that's great. If you'd rather have something a little bit bigger to be quicker, that's also great. So it really depends on your own preference. I'm going to go here with, I think, 35-ish%. And just like the brush size is totally up to you, the colors are also totally up to you. But if you want to follow along, I will add the hex code of the colors I am using right here on the top right of my screen. And then if you take that code, you can go in your color menu, in the value submenu, and you can add it in the hexadecimal section right here. So let's start, for example, with the main color of the body. I am going with a gray cat, so I'm going to work with a gray, which has the X code 74787B. So a pretty neutral gray with a little bit of blue in it. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're ready to actually start drawing. Like I said, we're going to start with the body, which is going to be a simple oval shape like this one. Now the only thing that really matters here is you make sure that your shape is fully closed at the top right here and at the bottom. If there's a little overlap, it does not matter at all. And then we're going to fill in the shape by dragging the color over it and adjusting the threshold by holding the pencil on the screen and then moving it from right to left to right to left until the color fills in too much of the shape. And that's really it for the body. Now we're going to move on to the head. And for that, we're going to create a new layer because later in the video, when we add the shading, it's going to be way easier if our main shapes are on different layers. So go ahead and tap on the plus right here to create a new layer. Then tap on the layer to open the layer menu and rename your layer to Head. Now because this is a new layer, we don't have Assisted on it, which means if I draw, it's not going to be automatically mirrored. So go ahead and tap on your layer once more to open the layer menu, and select Drawing Assist right here. And the color we're going to use for the head is going to be a slightly paler version of our gray. So 85898B. Now the head can be multiple different shapes. It could be a simple circle. I'm going to have mine be almost a circle, but the bottom half is going to be a little bit wider. And you're going to start your circle just a tiny little bit above the oval. And bringing it like this. Then once we have that, we're going to move on straight to the ears, which are going to be on the same layer as the head, so that's easy. And the ears are just triangles with rounded sides. So now that we have the head and I guess the body or the front legs, we're going to draw the back legs. So go ahead and create a new layer once more. And this time drag the layer so it's at the very bottom of the list, so under the head and the body. And then go ahead and rename it to legs. And activate Drawing Assist so that we have the symmetry. This time we're going to go with a slightly darker gray with the X code 5255557. And the legs are super easy. They're pretty much the same thing as the head, just a little bit bigger and a little bit wider. And one thing here, don't forget to fully close your shape, otherwise you won't be able to fill it in. Okay, so we're almost done with the basic structure, so let's keep going. Let's add the tail next. We're going to put that one under the legs. We're going to rename the layer to tail. But because we don't have two tails, we don't want the mirroring effect, so we're not going to activate Drawing Assist on the tail layer. With the X code 444749. And here you can really draw whatever tail shape you want. But don't forget to close it so that you can fill it in. Now the paws on my cat, I want them to be white. But if my background is white, I'm not going to see them. So I'm going to change my background color next. And if you want to do the same, super easy, you can just select the background color layer that comes with any Procreate canvas. And the X code I'm going to use here is 181C1F. Great. Now with that, we're going to be able to add the paws, and we're going to add the back paws on the legs layer and the front paws on the body layer. And for the paws, you could keep working with the monoline brush, but I'm going to switch to a different brush that has a little bit of texture in it to give my illustration a little bit more character. If you'd like to use that brush as well, it is completely free and you can grab it from the video description below. So once you've installed the brush, it's probably going to be in a folder named Imported, which I dragged all the way up, but sometimes it's at the very bottom of the list, which is a little bit annoying. So you might have to scroll all the way down. And it is named Soft Paint. And although I said the paws were white, it's going to be slightly off-white. And the exact color I am using here is E9, E5, E3. So almost white, but not quite. And here I'm going to start with the paws on the legs. I'm going to test my brush size. That's pretty good. So around 3%. And then nothing super fancy. We're just going to draw these nice ovals for the paws. And we're going to manually fill them in to get all the texture from the brush. And we're going to do the same thing on the body layer to add the front paws. Great. Now that was probably the hardest part of the video, creating this base structure. The next few sections are about actually making it look like a cat, so adding the facial features, then customizing it, and finally adding some simple lights and shadows. But before we move on to these sections, make sure you take the time to adjust your base shapes if you're not super happy with them. That could mean erasing some sections, redrawing some sections, or using a distortion tool. For example, I feel like my head might be a little bit too tall. I might want to squish it a little bit. So I can go back on the head layer here, pick the arrow tool right here. And if I set it to freeform, it's going to allow me to do exactly that, just squish it a little bit. I might feel also like the front of the body is a little bit too wide around the neck, so I could go back on my body layer right here. Grab my eraser and set it to the same brush I used for the body shape, so monoline, and just make that section a little bit more narrow. So here, pause the video if there's anything you want to tweak, otherwise we're going to move on to adding the facial features. So let's just jump in right away. We're going to start with the eyes, and we're going to draw the eyes on a few different layers. The first one we're going to create is going to be just for the white section of the eye, so you can rename it to white part of eyes. Make sure it is above the head, and go ahead and activate Drawing Assist here so that Procreate mirrors what we draw on one side onto the next. I'm going to stick with my same off-white that I used for the paws, but I'm going to go back to my monoline brush here. And you could draw really whatever eye shape you want here. You could draw big ovals, you could draw small dots, you could draw upwards curves like this for happy eyes, downward curves for sleepy eyes or relaxed eyes. I'm going to go with open eyes that have more of an almond shape, and I'm going to position them roughly here, so kind of the bottom third of the face. So really big, intense curve for the top of the eye, and an almost straight line on the bottom, just slightly curvy. And I like to come in and draw a pretty quick shape to start with, and then just come back in and refine it a little bit. But there's really no right or wrong way to do the eyes here, so just experiment with a few different shapes and see which ones you like the most. Just popping in for a second, if you are enjoying today's video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. I know this is the most YouTuber thing to say, and it still pains me to say it, but it really makes a huge difference when people do that. And it's a great way to support your favorite creators and help us create more free content for you. So huge thank you for your help, and let's get back to the video. Then once you have the white part of the eye, we're going to add the black part of the eye. So the iris or the pupil, I guess, kind of a combination of both. So create a new layer, and I'm going to rename that new layer to, I guess, pupils. Otherwise, same thing, we're going to activate Drawing Assist to get the mirroring effect. And in order for the pupils to stay within the white shape we have, we're going to activate what is called Clipping Mask. So if you go in your layer menu for the pupils layer, you're going to see Clipping Mask right above Drawing Assist. And that's going to bring up this little arrow here, pointing down to the white part of the eye layer. And essentially what that arrow says is whatever you draw on this layer is going to stay within the shape of what's in this layer. And the color I'm going to use is not pure black. It's this nice charcoal gray. And the X code for it is 1E1F20. And just like for the eyes, the shape of the pupils is totally up to you. Technically, cats have these vertical oval pupils, so you could have those. I'm going to disregard anatomy here and just draw some much rounder shapes. Nothing more complicated than that. We're also going to add some highlights, and I'm actually going to keep them on the pupils layer to keep our file a little bit more streamlined. But in order for the lights to make sense, we're going to need to deactivate Drawing Assist. Otherwise, they're not going to be on the same side in each eye, which is just not how light works. So go ahead and deactivate Drawing Assist here. And then pick pure white. And then just add these little ovals on the right side of each eye. And the last thing we're going to do for the eyes is add a line on the top. So a new layer, eye line. And for this one, you can activate Drawing Assist to make your life easier. And go back to the charcoal gray we used for the eyes. And you can grab the color by holding your finger on the screen and then releasing it. And you could keep working with the monoline. I'm going to go back to the free soft paint brush, although I'm probably going to make it a little bit smaller than what I've been working with. So something around 2%. And I'm just going to outline the top of the eyes, but you can outline the top and the bottom if you'd rather. Great. Now before we move on to the nose and the mouth, we are going to group all of these layers to keep everything related to the eyes in one section. And you can group layers in Procreate by swiping them towards the right with one finger and selecting Group right here at the top. You can then collapse the group by tapping on the arrow and renaming the group just like you would a layer. Here, I'm going to rename it to eyes. And that means if I select the group, and then, for example, use my arrow tool, I'm going to be able to move all these layers at once. Great. With that, we're ready to add the nose and the mouth. So just go ahead and create a new layer, rename it to nose and mouth. And don't forget to activate Drawing Assist. For the nose, we're going to work with a pale salmony pink color. And the X code is C69C8B. And I'm going to work with the same brush and keep the same size I used for the outline of the eyes. And we're going to draw this little shape right here. For the mouth, I'm going to go back to just the color I used for the body. So you can once more grab that. And we're going to draw a nice big rounded W. That's almost it for the facial features. The last few things we have to do are adding the whiskers, the inside of the ears, little clumps of hair on the cheeks and the forehead. So let's do the whiskers next. We're just going to create a new layer, rename it to whiskers. And here I'm not going to use Drawing Assist because I want to start breaking the symmetry a little bit so it's not too symmetrical. And here I'm going to use pure white, which I'm going to grab from the highlight in the eye. Brush size is up to you, of course. I'm going to use 1%. I'm not sure if these are still called whiskers, but whatever they are, I'm going to add them. And then 3 on each side of the face. And from there, we're going to draw the inside of the ear, which I'm going to draw directly on the head layer. And I'm going to use the color I used for the legs. So I'm just going to grab that here. And then all we're going to do here is with the same brush, but maybe a little bit bigger, the exact size doesn't matter. We're going to draw a curve that follows the shape of the head. And then curves that follow the shape of the ear, just like this. And just like we did for the paws, we're going to manually fill in the inside of the ears to get a little bit of texture from the brush. Then I'm going to go back in with the color I used for the head and just add these 3 little ovals to make it look a little bit like there's fur in front of the ears. Now I'm realizing here my ears might be a little bit too round at the bottom, for my liking at least, so I'm going to bring them down here a little bit straighter. Okay, I much prefer that. Now with that said, the last thing we're going to do here on the head is add some little clumps like we did on the ears, but on top of the head and on top, or on the side of the face, I should say. And for that, we're going to deactivate the assisted option. So deactivate Drawing Assist in the menu. To once more help break that perfect symmetry here and have an illustration that flows a little bit more. So I'm going to add 2 tufts here on the top of the head. And a few tufts here on the side. The exact shape doesn't matter at all. You could skip this, you could add more. Really here, this is a very easy way to customize your cat, so experiment with a few different things if you have time. So once more, feel free to pause the video here, take all the time you need to work on the head and the facial features. If there's anything you feel is not in the right position, you can always use the selection tool right here. Let's say I want to move, I don't know, these whiskers. You could go on the whiskers layer, use the selection tool, setting it to freehand to draw a selection around whatever element you want to move. And then with your arrow tool, you're going to be able to rotate them, move them, and resize them as needed. So at this stage, this is all about customization. It is super, super simple, but it's going to really bring the cat to life. I'm going to create a cat that has the bottom section of the face white, a little white tip on the tail, and then a white belly and neck. But again, this is a really easy opportunity to customize the cat to either match your cat or just to do something different from what I'm doing. And here I'm going to work once more with my soft paint free brush, but you could work with really any other brush of your choice. I do recommend though having a brush that has a little bit of texture to it, just to give more life to your character. I'm going to grab the same color I used for the paws, and to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to activate what is called alpha lock so that I can draw on a layer and stay within the shapes that were already on the layer. So to activate alpha lock, super easy. You can swipe a layer with 2 fingers toward the right, or you can open the layer menu and manually activate it from the list. And alpha lock is really similar to what we did here with the pupils, which was a clipping mask, but instead of being 2 different layers, it is all on 1 layer. So here I'm really just going to draw this wavy shape on the bottom of the face, coming up for the nose, kind of going under the eyes and following that shape, and then slightly higher up again on the cheeks. And I'm going with a much bigger brush, well, much bigger, 4%, and then once more manually fill it in. Already I feel like the cat is significantly cuter than it used to be, but it's really just getting started. I'm going to add some stripes as well, and those make a massive difference too. But before I add the stripes, I'm going to add, like I said, the belly and the neck. So once more, I'm going to activate alpha lock on my body layer. So swiping it towards the right with 2 fingers. And I'm going to deactivate drawing assist because I want to once more break up the perfect symmetry here. And I'm going to use this white belly as an excuse, or as a way, I guess, to separate the 2 front legs. So I'm going to bring a line almost all the way down and create this big round V shape. Then I'm going to, once more, you guessed it, manually fill it in. I'm also going to add a little bit of white on the tail, so activating alpha lock on the tail, making my brush quite a bit bigger this time, so let's say 11. And with light pressure, I'm going to come in and add this texture. I might actually add some on the top of the ears as well. Let's improvise here. So going back on my head layer, and just adding a little bit of white here on top of the ears. I think that's pretty good for the white. The next thing I'm going to do though is add some stripes, and those are really going to transform everything. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, myself. If you've been wanting to learn how to draw your own illustrations, to take whatever is in your head and put it on paper, then consider checking out my illustration course, Illustration from Scratch. This is a course with 10 modules that will teach you everything you need to know to start drawing your own art, no matter your current skill level. You will learn things like color theory, how to add lights, shadows, and create a mood. We will demystify perspective and how to create beautiful backgrounds. You will learn how to make your illustrations appealing with the use of good composition, on top of many other things like drawing realistic and cartoon characters, both the head and the body, as well as how to build good drawing habits and how to get unstuck on days where nothing seems to work. And although it is an online course, you won't be left alone. There are Q&A sections after each module where you can ask me questions, and there's also a private community for the students where you can post your exercises and course project to get feedback from me. So if you want to start loving what you draw, then check out the link in the video description below and make sure to use the special promo code to get the exclusive YouTube discount. I'll see you in the course. So we're just going to grab the color we used for the legs, or at least that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use that for the stripes on the head, and then I'm going to adjust for the other sections. So on the head layer, let me experiment with the side of the brush here. Well, I got lucky, that's pretty good. 7%. I'm going to draw one big stripe like this on the middle of the forehead, and 2 slightly shorter ones on the side. That are a little bit curvy as well. I might add a few on the cheeks too. Like this. And if you're working with the same brush as me, one tip here, start inside the head and then go outward. That way you're gonna get a slightly narrow start and a thicker end. I'm also going to add some stripes on the front legs, the back legs, and the tail. But I have to change layers for that, so I'm going to go on my body layer next. I'm going to test the color. I think here I'm going to grab the tail color instead, so it's slightly darker. Otherwise, same thing, slight curves, starting from the inside of the shape, going toward the outside. And you could use symmetry here, so activating drawing assist if you wanted to, but once more, I'm trying to break that perfect symmetry. Moving on to the legs. And here I'm going to make that gray a little bit darker, so let's see. That's pretty good. 373A3C. And we're going to activate alpha lock on our legs layer as well. We're also going to deactivate drawing assist. And then we're going to come in and draw the stripes. Now last but not least, the stripes on the tail. Going to once more make my color a little bit darker. 2C2E30. And here you should already have alpha lock activated. If not, go ahead and activate it. And then just add your stripes, making sure these are really quite nice and curvy to show that the tail is round. Oh, and one thing I forgot, which is going to make a big difference too, we're going to add some tiny lines on the paws to define the toes. So you can go back on the legs layer, and here, let's just go back and grab the color we used for the mouth. Go back to a much smaller brush, so 1-ish%. And we're going to draw, actually maybe more like 2. Yeah, let's go with 2. And we're just going to draw 2 outward curves on each paw. Don't forget to switch back to the body layers for the front paws. Now you could stop here if you wanted to, but the last section is probably what makes the biggest difference after the facial features. It is adding some lights and shadows. And I'm going to show you a very quick and easy method to shade without even drawing. So take the time you need to finish any kind of customization, and then I'll meet you in the next chapter. Great, so as I mentioned, shading here is going to be pretty quick and painless, but it's going to make a massive difference. So go ahead and select your head layer here. And you could manually shade if you want to, but here I want something super simple, so I'm going to use a technique that is really so helpful. It is a combination of a selection tool and then adjustment tools, I guess, to lighten and darken the different colors. Let's start by grabbing the selection tool right here, making sure it is set to freehand so you can draw whatever selection. You're going to draw this kind of rough moon shape on the bottom left section of the head. And you're going to tap on the gray circle to close the selection. Now the magic trick here is to add a bit of a gradient within the selection so that we can shade and not just have a super harsh shadow, but instead have this nice soft gradient. So to add a gradient within the selection in Procreate, you're going to use this feather option right here at the bottom. And the amount is going to be something you can experiment with. Here I'm going to go with probably around 40%. It's pretty hard to explain, but you can see if I have 0%, my selection here has this pretty sharp edge, but as you add the feathering amount, your diagonal lines around this edge of the selection are going to show what the feathering is going to look like. So it's going to give you a bit of a preview of the gradient. And with your selection still activated, go ahead and open the adjustment panel right here. And select the first option, hue, saturation, and brightness. And then if you go ahead and lower the brightness, you're going to see you're going to be able to create a very quick and easy shadow. So I'm going to lower mine just a little bit. I'm going to set it to 46%. And I'm going to tap on my selection tool to exit the selection. Obviously, you could use the same technique to create highlights. So if I use my selection tool here, this time drawing more of an oval on the top right of my shape. Adding some feathering, so probably around 30% here. Going back to hue, saturation, and brightness, and this time lifting the brightness, I'm going to be able to add some lights. So I'm going to lift the brightness up to 53%. Now we're going to do the same thing on the body. So you can select your body layer, grab your selection tool, and once more draw a crescent moon shape that covers the bottom left of the body. But this time you're also going to include this section here because the head is going to be shading that part of the body. Probably feathering around 35% here. And we're going to lower the brightness a little bit more here. Let's say to 42%. And I'm not even going to add a light here. I'm just going to move on to the legs, which here is going to be a bit of an interesting shape. I want this whole back leg to be selected because in my mind, the front legs are going to be shading it. So I'm just going to select the whole back left leg. But on the back right leg, I'm going to do this crescent moon shape. I'm going to add, let's go with 35% feathering again. I'm going to lower the brightness, let's go with 44. I'm going to add some shadows on the bottom of the tail. So a crescent moon shape, kind of like this. We're going to feather it, let's go with 25%. Lower the brightness to 45. And that was really the bulk of the shading. Already that's pretty good, but the nose and the eyes are quite flat. So we're going to manually add some shadows to those, but before that, I might go ahead and just deactivate my vertical guide I have here so we can see what we're doing really well. If you want to do the same, you can go here on your magic wand icon. Still in the canvas menu, just deactivate the drawing guide. The symmetry options will still work, it's just that you're not going to see the line. And here we're going to go back to the nose and mouth layer. We're going to color pick that salmon pink we have and make it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated. So let's see. A77460. And we're just going to outline essentially the bottom of the nose. And then we're going to add a highlight with a lighter version of our salmon pink. E5D0C8, although it doesn't have to be exact at all, you could just roughly make it lighter. And just like when we added the highlights in the eyes, we're also going to deactivate Drawing Assist. And we're going to add a simple oval on the top right of the nose. Now you could totally leave the eyes like they are. I like to add a bit of a shadow on the top. And to do that, we're going to create a new layer below the outline but above the pupils. We're going to rename it to Shadows. Oh boy. And we're going to apply this shadow layer as a clipping mask as well so it stays within the white part of the eye shape we have here. And we're also going to use what is called a blending mode, which is essentially a way to take the colors from one layer and then make them change depending on the colors from the layers underneath. And the blending modes in Procreate are a little bit hidden. You can access them by tapping on the little N right next to the check mark here, which is going to open up the opacity slider. I'm going to set mine around 50%. And this list here with a bunch of seemingly random words, which are the blending modes. In our case here, we're going to pick the one at the very, very top of the list, multiply. And we're just going to grab the color we have here in the middle of the face. It doesn't need to be exact, so don't even worry about the hex code. Just grab whatever you have roughly here. And then maybe make your brush a little bit bigger, so kind of 4-ish%. And draw a shadow like this on the top of the eyes. And the last shadow we're going to add is just a shadow under the cat, so it's not just floating in thin air. So you can go ahead and collapse your eye group, create a new layer below all the layers you have, and rename that layer to Ground Shadow. And here you can go ahead and just pick pure black and draw a shadow under the cat. And if you're subscribed to my emails, you might have seen that the exclusive email freebie for this month is a fish pattern brush, which you can use to quickly add a fish pattern to the background. And again, that brush is an exclusive freebie that was sent only to the people that were subscribed to my email list at the time this tutorial came out. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to do so right now by following the link in the video description, so that you don't miss any more freebies in the future. So if you do have a fish brush, go ahead and create a new layer, put it below the ground shadow, rename it to fish pattern, and let's lower the opacity here to around 30%. We're going to keep working with black. We're just going to grab the brush. I like that size, 39%. And if you brush over your canvas, you're going to be able to quickly add a bunch of fish. Might lower the opacity even more, let's say 15? Well, 13. And there you go. I would absolutely love to see the cats you created by following this video, so make sure to share that with me on socials. My handle should be floating on the screen somewhere right now. And if you tag me, your cat might be featured at the start of my next video. If you enjoyed this video, I think you might also like the ones from this playlist, which is all about drawing cute animals. But before you move on to the next tutorial, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to make sure you don't miss any future tutorials. Then click on the link right here, and I'll see you there.